What's the breaking point? What turns a family home into a place of pure terror? Is it one sudden violent act, a moment of bloodshed that stains the walls forever? Or is it more of a slow creeping darkness, a sickness that takes root in the foundation and grows through generations, feeding on misery and despair until the house itself becomes a monument to suffering? Some houses don't just get abandoned, they get cursed. The wood rots and the paint peels, but the pain stays, trapped in the decaying frame like a ghost in a machine. These aren't just empty buildings, they're containers for tragedy. They're silence screaming with the stories of what happened inside. Today, we're counting down 4 of America's most terrifying abandoned houses. These are places where real-life horror stories unfolded, leaving behind a legacy of paranormal activity so intense, so malevolent, that they've become breeding grounds for nightmares. From mansions built on dirty money to homes that literally consumed their own dark secrets, these locations are the stuff of actual horror. You'll be glad you're watching from a distance. Let's get started. Number 4, the Sallie House, Atchison, Kansas. We're kicking off our countdown not with some sprawling Gothic mansion, but with a house that from the outside looks deceptively normal. Located at 508 North 2nd Street in Atchison, Kansas, the Sallie House is a modest, unassuming brick home. It sits quietly on its street, giving no outward sign of the torment people have documented within its walls. But for paranormal investigators and those who've dared to spend the night, this little house is considered one of the most active and hostile locations in the entire country. The evil here isn't in how it looks, but in its history and in the very air you breathe inside. The house was built in the late 1800s, and for a long time its history was pretty unremarkable. That all changed when it became the home and office of a local doctor. This is where the story of the house's most famous and perhaps most tragic spirit begins. The legend, as it's been passed down for generations in Atchison, tells of a medical procedure gone horribly wrong. A frantic mother supposedly rushed her 6-year-old daughter, a little girl named Sallie, to the doctor's home office, desperate for help. The girl was suffering from terrible abdominal pain, which the doctor quickly diagnosed as severe appendicitis. He knew surgery was her only chance, and there was no time to waste. According to the legend, the doctor laid the terrified child on an operating table right there in the house. Believing the appendix was about to rupture, he made the first cut before the anesthesia had fully kicked in. Jolted awake by the searing pain, Sallie started screaming, believing the man who was supposed to be helping her was actually torturing her. Her final moments were a blur of terror and agony before she died on that table. It's this traumatic end, this final memory of a trusted man causing her unbearable pain, that is believed to have anchored her spirit to the house, filled with a special rage towards adult men. For decades, the story was just that, a chilling piece of local folklore. Then, in 1993, the haunting of the Sallie House erupted from whispered legend into documented, terrifying reality. A young couple, Tony and Deborah Pickman, rented the house. They were expecting their first child and just saw it as a charming, historic place to start their family. The paranormal activity started small. Their dog would frequently bark and growl at empty spaces, especially focusing on the upstairs nursery.
Soon, objects started moving on their own. They'd come downstairs in the morning and find pictures on the walls turned completely upside down. Then the activity escalated, and it focused its aggression almost entirely on Tony. It started with cold spots, but quickly became physical. He would suddenly feel the sting of being scratched. Deborah would lift his shirt to find long red welts and deep scratches on his back and chest that seemed to appear from nowhere. The attacks got more frequent and more violent. Fires would spontaneously erupt in the house, only to extinguish themselves just as mysteriously. Heavy furniture was seen moving or being thrown across rooms when Tony was near. The entity in the house seemed to have a clear goal: to terrorize and harm the man of the house while leaving his wife and their newborn baby alone. The Pickman family's harrowing experience eventually forced them to flee. Their story was documented on the TV show Sightings, which launched the Sallie House to national infamy. Since then, countless paranormal teams have investigated, and the evidence they've gathered is deeply disturbing. They report everything from full batteries draining in an instant to the disembodied voices of a woman and child caught on recorders, and shadow figures darting through hallways. Male investigators continue to report being scratched, pushed, and shoved by an unseen force. The nursery remains a hotspot for paranormal energy, with toys being scattered across the room and objects caught moving on camera. What's so terrifying about the Sallie House is the debate over who or what is haunting it. While the legend points to the tragic ghost of a little girl, many seasoned investigators believe something far more sinister is at play. Some think a darker, non-human entity is just pretending to be a child's ghost to gain sympathy, using Sally's story as a convenient mask. The sheer violence and targeted aggression feel, to many, more demonic than ghostly. The scratches, often appearing in threes, are considered by some to be a mockery of the Holy Trinity, a classic sign of a demonic presence. It's also worth noting that historical research has found no concrete evidence that a girl named Sallie ever died in the house. This has led to speculation that the whole origin story might just be a legend created to explain a presence that was already there. Whether it's the vengeful spirit of a little girl or something much older and darker, the energy inside the Sallie House is undeniably real and profoundly hostile. Today, the house at 508 North 2nd Street sits vacant, but it is far from empty. It's been preserved as a location for paranormal tours and overnight investigations, allowing the brave to experience the phenomena for themselves. It stands as a living laboratory of the paranormal, a place where the veil between our world and the next feels terrifyingly thin.
Number 3. The Hardie-Coleman House, Uniontown, Alabama. Some houses are haunted by ghosts. Others are haunted by their secrets. Our next location is a place where a secret was literally buried, a crime so dark it poisoned the very ground it was built on. In the small town of Uniontown, Alabama, stands the decaying corpse of a once stately mansion. Built around 1918, the Hardie-Coleman House was a grand neoclassical revival home. Today, it's known by a different, more sinister name, the Allen Lucy Murder House. From the road, the house looks like it's being swallowed by the earth. Decades of neglect have allowed nature to reclaim it. Kudzu and ivy crawl up the columns and through broken windows like skeletal fingers. The roof sags, the paint is a distant memory, and the grand front porch, the very stage upon which this home's horror was revealed, is collapsing into the dirt.
This house isn't just abandoned, it's dying, and its slow, agonizing death is a direct reflection of the human tragedy that happened here. In 1978, a couple named Philip and Margaret Lucy adopted a boy named Alan. They lived in the Hardie-Coleman House with their biological son, Jason. To outsiders, they were a family, but inside the walls of the mansion, a dark story was playing out. In the spring of 1985, 13-year-old Alan Lucy vanished. His adoptive parents told everyone he'd been misbehaving and had probably run away. For years, that was the official story. Alan's picture appeared on missing children flyers, but the case went cold. He was just another statistic. But one person knew the truth: Alan's younger brother, Jason. From the very beginning, Jason told anyone who would listen a far more horrifying story. He said he witnessed a violent argument between his father and Alan, which ended with his father, Philip, punching Alan in the head. He saw his brother fall to the floor, motionless. Later, he said he saw his father outside, covered in dirt and holding a shovel. But he was just a kid, and for 9 long years, nobody took him seriously. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. In 1993, after a suspicious fire damaged the house, Philip and Margaret Lucy put the property up for sale. It was quickly purchased by a man who wanted to restore old homes. In 1994, he sent a team of workers to begin renovations, a project that would unearth the house's buried secret. While checking the foundation for termites, a worker crawling under the front porch snagged his rake on something in the dirt. He started digging, and what he found wasn't treasure. Beneath a layer of bricks, he uncovered a plastic garbage bag. Inside, wrapped in a Disney-themed blanket, were the skeletal remains of a child. Dental records soon confirmed the unthinkable. It was Alan Lucy. His brother hadn't run away. He had been murdered and buried just feet from the front door. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community. Philip Lucy was charged with murder, and Jason, no longer a boy whose terrible stories could be dismissed, became the key witness against his own father. After a series of trials, Philip Lucy was finally found guilty in 2001 and sentenced to life in prison. The day after his sentencing, he hanged himself in his jail cell. Following the gruesome discovery, all work on the Hardie-Coleman House stopped. It was boarded up and left to rot, a permanent monument to the crime committed there. Urban explorers who have ventured inside describe a scene of utter desolation. Floors are collapsing, ceilings are caving in, and every surface is coated in a thick layer of dust and mold. The very air is said to be heavy with sorrow and despair. Locals and ghost hunters speak of paranormal activity centered around the porch where Alan's body was found. There are reports of disembodied cries, the ghostly sounds of a child weeping in the night. Others have claimed to see a pale figure lingering near the spot where he was buried, a lost soul forever tied to his own makeshift grave. One of the most chilling anecdotes comes from the man who bought the house from the Lucys. He recalled sitting on the front porch with Philip Lucy before the body was found. The new owner noted how Philip seemed to enjoy rocking in his chair at one specific corner of the porch, the exact spot directly above where Alan's remains would later be discovered. It's a monstrously disturbing image, a father sitting calmly above the hidden grave of his murdered son. Today, the Hardie-Coleman House is a ruin, slowly being devoured by the Alabama wilderness. It's the ultimate nightmare house, not because of some ancient legend, but because of a real, documented, and utterly heartbreaking evil. Call to action. All right, we're halfway through our countdown, and believe me, the locations only get more terrifying from here. If you appreciate stories that dig into real tragedy and documented horror, do us a favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because you are not going to want to miss the final 2 houses on our list. The number 1 spot is a place so notorious, its name is practically synonymous with horror. Now, back to the nightmares. Number 2, the S.K. Pierce Mansion, Gardner, Massachusetts. There are houses where one tragedy leaves a permanent scar, and then there are houses that just seem to be magnets for misery, places where tragedy isn't a single event, but a constant generational curse. Our number 2 spot is one of those locations, the S.K. Pierce Mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts. This isn't a house with one ghost story, it's a house with a household of ghost stories. Standing at 4 West Broadway, the mansion is an imposing 7,000-square-foot Victorian beast. It was built in 1875 by Sylvester K. Pierce as a testament to his success, but the dream of this magnificent home soured almost immediately. Its opulence would soon be overshadowed by a legacy of financial ruin, betrayal, mysterious deaths, and violent paranormal activity. The darkness set in just weeks after Sylvester Pierce, Susan, and their young son moved in. Susan contracted a rare bacterial illness and died inside the mansion. It was the first of many deaths the house would witness. Pierce eventually remarried and had more children, passing away in the home himself in 1888. What followed was not prosperity, but bitter conflict. His sons fought relentlessly over the house and the family business. This infighting, plus the Great Depression, crippled the Pierce empire. The youngest son, Edward, ended up with the mansion, but the family fortune was gone. To make ends meet, he had to turn the once proud family home into a boarding house. This is when the mansion's dark reputation really began to fester. The boarding house era transformed the S.K. Pierce Mansion into a den of vice. It became known as a hub for drinking, gambling, and prostitution, and with vice came violence and death. Local legend speaks of a prostitute who was strangled to death in one of the second-floor bedrooms. Another boarder, a Finnish immigrant named Eno Sari, burned to death in the master bedroom in 1963 in a mysterious fire that was somehow contained almost entirely to his mattress. There are also rumors of a young boy who drowned in the basement. The house was no longer a home, it was a warehouse for human suffering, with at least 7 documented deaths occurring within its walls. The house eventually fell into disrepair and was left vacant for decades. When a new family, Edwin Gonzalez and Lillian Otero, bought the home in 2009, they had no idea about its horrific past. They would soon find out. Immediately, their dream home turned into a nightmare. They experienced a barrage of paranormal activity, from disembodied voices and shadow figures to doors slamming and furniture moving on its own. The energy in the house became more and more hostile. Visitors and the family saw a full-bodied apparition of a woman and the ghostly figure of a sad little girl. The sounds of a child's bouncing ball would echo from the attic, but the most terrifying events were the physical ones. Guests reported being pushed by unseen hands, with one nearly being shoved down a flight of stairs. The energy in the house became so threatening that after just 2 years, the family was forced.
Number 1. The Los Feliz Murder Mansion, Los Angeles, California. There are haunted houses, and then there is 2475 Glendower Place.
Our number one spot is maybe the most unsettling kind of abandoned home there is, the time capsule. This is a place where a single horrific act of violence was so sudden and final that it didn't just end lives, it froze a moment in time. For over half a century, this Spanish Revival mansion in the affluent Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles stood as a silent, dust-covered memorial to a nightmare. It is known simply as the Los Feliz Murder Mansion. The story begins in the 1950s. The house was home to a respected cardiologist, Dr. Harold Perelson, his wife Lillian, and their 3 children, 18-year-old Judy, 13-year-old Joel, and 11-year-old Debbie. On the outside, they were the picture of success, but behind closed doors, a crisis was brewing. Dr. Perelson was in deep financial trouble. The pressure was building to a catastrophic breaking point. That point was reached in the pre-dawn hours of December 6, 1959. In an act of shocking violence, Dr. Perelson took a ball-peen hammer from his workshop. He walked into the master bedroom where his wife Lillian was sleeping and bludgeoned her to death. Her screams woke their eldest daughter, Judy. When she ran to see what was wrong, her father attacked her with the same hammer. Though badly beaten, she managed to escape and run to a neighbor's to call for help. Alerted by the noise, the 2 younger children woke up. Dr. Perelson approached them, but instead of harming them, he just calmly told them they were having a nightmare and sent them back to bed. As his terrified younger children hid in their rooms, Dr. Perelson walked into his bathroom, swallowed a cocktail of tranquilizers and acid, and lay down to die. When police arrived, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. Lillian was dead in the bedroom. Dr. Perelson was on the floor nearby, the bloody hammer still in his grasp. Open beside him was a copy of Dante's Divine Comedy, eerily left open to a passage that began, "Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathway had been lost." The 3 surviving children were taken away to live with relatives. The house, stained by the violence of that night, was sold in a probate auction the following year to a couple named Julian and Emily Enriquez. And this is where the story gets truly bizarre. The Enriquez family never moved in, not for a single day. For the next 50 years, they and later their son Rudy, who inherited the property, held on to this prime piece of real estate, but left it completely untouched. The Los Feliz Murder Mansion became a macabre time capsule. For decades, anyone who dared to peek through the grimy windows would see a scene straight out of 1959. The furniture, a 1950s-style TV set, it was all there, slowly being consumed by a thick blanket of dust. Most chillingly, because the murders happened in early December, there were wrapped Christmas presents still sitting on a table, waiting for a holiday that would never come. It was as if the Perelson family had simply vanished mid-breath. This refusal by the new owners to either sell or clean out the house fueled decades of speculation. Why would anyone buy a murder scene just to preserve it as a private museum of horror? The house itself began to decay, and its paranormal reputation grew. Trespassers and neighbors reported strange lights, disembodied voices, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched. The sudden, violent trauma of that night seemed to have been absorbed by the very walls, playing out on a loop. Finally, in 2016, after the owner died, the house was sold and its contents were cleared out. It was sold again in 2020. But can a place like this ever truly be cleansed? The Los Feliz Murder Mansion is the ultimate nightmare because its horror is both brutally real and profoundly mysterious. We know what happened. A successful man snapped and destroyed his family, but we'll never know why. The house stands as a monument to that awful night where domestic bliss was shattered by a hammer and an entire family's existence was erased in minutes. It's a chilling, silent testament to the idea that some places are so profoundly marked by tragedy they are forever lost to the darkness. Conclusion. From a small Kansas home seething with dark energy to a California mansion frozen in the moment of its own murder, these houses are grim reminders that the worst horrors often happen right at home. They are more than just wood and nails. They are vessels of pain. We started by asking what turns a house into a nightmare. Maybe the answer is memory. A house remembers. It remembers the laughter, the love, and most powerfully, it remembers the terror. And some memories are so violent that they refuse to fade. They just linger in the shadows of empty rooms and whisper in the wind that rattles the broken windows. So, the next time you pass an old abandoned house with its darkened windows staring out like vacant eyes, take a moment and wonder what secrets it's keeping.